This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is a very meaningful morning, a meaningful shir, and I'll explain to you why. This shir is Lil Nishmas, Rabbi Rindenau's son, has the same first name as our Rosh Yeshiva singer, so I, being a son-in-law, can't mention that name in his presence, but Rabbi Rindenau's son, the shir that it was dedicated yearly, Lil Nishmasa, was very dear to our beloved Rabbi Rindenau. It meant a lot to him and his family. He felt that the words of Torah that were learned and studied in this base medrash gave a tremendous uplifting to the neshama of his son, as he felt through all the words of Torah that he shared from him and from his great ancestors from the Chernobyl dynasty. It's a unique opportunity this year that coincides still within the 12-month period of Avelos for Rabbi Rindenau himself. This year, a parent has the ability to lift up the neshama of the child. Chazal say, Bra Kara Davu, a child is an extension of a parent. And we know that a child, whatever they do, gives a merit to the parent in the next world. Rav Chaim Shulevitz discusses by David HaMelech, you see the concept in the reverse position, that a parent has the ability to lift up a child, and to, no matter where they are, to bring them to higher heights in Shemayim. This shir, Rabbi Rindenau set up to be an opportunity in this base medrash, particularly to lift up and to have his beloved son come closer and closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we feel, as family to Rabbi Rindenau, that now we have to carry on this opportunity and this privilege as to grant the Ilu Nishama to his son as well as to himself. And this is not just an opportunity for family members, but through the words of Torah that's going to be spoken today here by Rabbi Pessin, who just landed from Eretz Yisrael 4 hours ago. The words of Torah that we taught from here, it should be an inspiration and a life lesson for ourselves to take away. And if we incorporate even one lesson from today, this will give a great merit to the Rindenau Mishpacha. Rabbi Pessin just landed from Eretz Yisrael. He is a Talmud of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, a Talmud of Rav Asher Weiss, and other great Torah luminaries in our time. There are Svarim that are published by Rabbi Pessin, which are over here for sale after the shir, and was welcome to come over. We had Rabbi Pessin. This is the third time we're having him, and Baruch Hashem, this time it's live. So we look forward to hearing the words Kavod Harav.
It's a tremendous chus, a great pleasure, and an honor to be involved in this special event. Shlomo Zalman ben Harav Mordechai Yisroel Tzvi and Harav Mordechai Yisroel Tzvi ben Moshe Aaron. I can say the name. Emetz Hashem, their neshamas should ascend higher and higher in the upper worlds. The truth is, Rabbi Bottenheim said that if anyone takes anything from the shir, the truth is, I'm talking to myself. You're going to be happening to sit right in front of you. I don't know why you're listening to a private conversation. But if one will take something, even one thought of inspiration, and it was already kedai. So today we're going to talk about, focus especially, about sharing the burden with one's friend. Because I think that encapsulates the essence of Rabbi Rindenau zichroino levracha, being there for others, caring, thinking about what does the other person really need. And we'll touch a few words about Eretz Yisrael, the significance, the importance of moving to Eretz Yisrael, as Rabbi Rindener was zoichet to do just a short while before his neshama ascended and was requested in the yeshiva shel Mala. So before we start, or as we start, and soon you'll see why, the tzibur of Talmidei Chachamim here. And first I have to ask permission, B'reshus Rav Singer, Maradei Asra, Rav Bodenheim, Rabbi Merkin, and all the Talmidei Chachamim and Rabbonim. I want to ask you a shayla. Very interesting shayla. In Yana Deyoima, just recently we had a little war going on in Eretz Yisrael. You know that. In Gaza. So there were some, how are we going to call them, Chabad activists, great people, that went down south. Infantry almost went in to Gaza. We were able to finish the whole thing with aerial souvenirs. That's one way of describing it. We didn't have to go in. But there were soldiers, thousands of soldiers waiting, ready, willing, and able to go in. But they didn't. So some Chabad guys came down to Gaza and brought 2,000 tzitzis and Sifrei Tehillim and Tefillin for the non-observant, for the secular soldiers, because there are no atheists in a foxhole. And when you are about to go in, everybody jumps on the tzitzis, on the Tefillin, on the Tehillim, and they all took him. But there was one soldier who's not Jewish. And he also wants, what is it? What are you doing there? Oh, it's a segula for protection. I'll take one too. I want the tzitzis too. I want the Tehillim. I want the Tefillin. So since this is a complicated shayla, these Chabad people asked me to come here this morning to Passaic Torah Institute and ask the Talmidei Chachamim that's sitting here, Rabbi say, what do you say? Baruch Hashem, the war is over, so they don't need an answer right now. But Rabbi say, can we give the non-Jew soldier the tzitzis, the Tehillim, and the Tefillin? Let's start with the tzitzis. What do you say, Rabbi say? Can we give him the tzitzis? Yes. In a Beis Din, yes or no doesn't go. We need some sources. We need Shulchan Aruch. We need, I'll take even Chumash. I need something. Shas, Poiskim. I also would like to give him, or maybe not. But we need some kind of a svara behind the yes. I need some kind of documentation. What do you say, Rabbi say? Not everybody together. There you go.
I'll be brave. I'll be the
Let's see. Maybe you're going to be the one who gets 2 points. It's a 2-point question. I don't know what you're going to do with the points, but you still get 2 points.
The mice of Noah.
Yeah.
With the Shem Chavis and Shem Yavin and Cham. I'm sorry. So that when they went in, that Shem was rewarded with tzitzits because he did it in the most sensitive way, and Yavin was rewarded also with the beged. So perhaps that's the makor, the fact that Goyim, because he wasn't Jewish, perhaps that's the makor that a Goy could wear some kind of garment.
Interesting, so.
When the ger is misgayer, you give him the mitzvah of tzitzis so that they'll be mechal Shabbos. So
when a ger is on the way to convert, he is not allowed to keep Shabbos. So therefore he has to violate one thing, some say even a derabanan. So some suggest, why don't you just carry tzitzis? That is one of the answers given to how did Avraham Avinu keep Shabbos before the Torah was given. Maybe he has a status of a Bein Noach, he's still not a Jew. But we don't specifically give every convert in the process specifically tzitzis. He can choose whatever he wants. He can also turn on the light, b'shinui. It doesn't necessarily have to be tzitzis. So that's not necessarily a source to tell us, yes, give the non-Jewish soldier the tzitzis.
Piggybacking on what Shmuel said, Avraham Avinu was concerned that maybe he's not Jewish. So
and therefore?
He's not allowed to keep Shabbos. So he wore long tzitzis. He adopted wore tzitzis because maybe he's not Jewish, so he'll be carrying on Shabbos. So we see there that a non-Jew can wear tzitzis because Avraham Avinu was concerned that maybe he's not Jewish. and therefore he's wearing tzitzis.
But did Chabad give it to Avraham Avinu? As far as I know, I'm not sure. Chabad wasn't around yet, but I'm not sure. We have to check it. We're asking, can a Jew give a goy a tzitzis?
Do we, obviously it's best to have him before, but I'd say, I'll be common sense. This goy is risking his life and going into battle, and if you don't give it to him, that can create enmity and put his life and his companions' lives at risk. Tzitzis itself is not inherently kodesh. You have to say a blessing on it, you have to treat it as a mitzvah. It's a garment, it has strings.
So tashmish mitzvah is not a mitzvah in itself. Interesting. Let's go to Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch Chaim Siman Chaf Seif Beis. Shulchan Aruch clearly says, you do not sell a tzitzis to a goy. Why not? What do you have against the goy? You have nothing against him. The Mishnah Vua over there in Seif Kot Nazayin explains. We're afraid. Maybe if the goy is going to be wearing a tzitzis, and I'm going to be walking around and saying, oh, he's a fellow Jew. And he happens to go out of town, and he'll ask me, why don't you go along with me? I said, sure. He's like, you're just like me, why not? But then, when we get out of town, he's going to kill the Eid. And for that reason, you're not allowed to sell a tzitzis to a goy. Says the Mishnah Bua there, but wait a second, the Chai Adam, who lived a few hundred years ago, already says this reason doesn't apply, because the goyim today don't go around and kill Jews. Except for our neighbors in the north, in the east, in the south. But normal goyim around.
It also wouldn't apply because you've given him a gun already.
True. But we don't need that. The Chai Adam says this reason doesn't apply in our times, but the Mishnah Bua says there's another reason. And another interesting reason that the Gemara quotes. That maybe a Jew will give his tzitzis to a woman of ill repute as her payment for her service. And then she'll say to people, you know where I got this from? See this? Ayid gave this to me. Do you have a greater chilul Hashem than that? Can't imagine one.
There's something important in the word sell or profit from as opposed to give as a gift.
No, because the Shulchan Aruch says you can't even give it to a wholesaler. So not only to the individual.
Independent of all the reasons that we were talking about, there will be a big chilul Hashem not to give it to him because he can, post on Twitter about it and then it will become a shine.
Could be that the soldiers down there don't have access to Twitter, but I'm not sure. We have to check that. But I think that the reason the Mishnah Bura is quoting from the Gemara also doesn't apply in this case. First of all, he's not a woman of ill repute. He is a soldier working on our behalf. Second of all, I don't think any woman of ill repute will agree to receive this as their payment in our times. Not shayach. And therefore I think that the tzitzis should be given to him. Not a problem. Fine. What about the Sefer Tehillim? Can we give it to the goy? Yes. What is Sefer Tehillim? It's all chapters of Emunah. The goyim are also required to have a belief in a Kodesh Baruch Hu. No problem with the Sefer Tehillim. What about Tefillin? No. What do you have against Tefillin or against the goy?
Tefillin is kedusha.
And therefore?
And you put it on the goy, he has no kedusha.
Yeah.
So there's a reason, there's a challenge of tefillin. Also, as a side point, just like we won't let women wear tefillin, that's why you're going to teach him about Guf Naki. He doesn't have appreciation.
So tell him, warn him.
But again, it's a kedusha. It's kedusha. It's not.
Who revealed to you this secret? Sounds great. Where'd you get this from? Give me a source. I'll take it.
I'll be Svara.
Svara is very nice. Can we paskin and based on your Svara as nice as it can be?
I would say maybe we can learn from mezuzah. We can take out the mezuzahs from the house, so all the more so.
Why do we take the mezuzah out of the house before we leave? By the way, are we allowed to take the mezuzah out before we leave?
I'm saying if you're selling the house.
If you're selling it to a goy, the next tenant is going to be a goy, you got to take it out. If it's a yid, you're not allowed to remove it. Why do we take it out? Because of lack of kedusha?
No, they'll throw it out.
They're going to be mevazeh. He's going to chuck it to the garbage. But let's see if you're right. I like your svara, but we're going to try to back it up now with the source.
Why aren't we concerned the same thing? Just like we're mezuzah that the goy is giving mavase, why are we concerned even though he's representing us? This is going the number.
What happens when your tzitzis wears out? Can you throw it to the garbage?
No, you're supposed to put it away properly.
Chiddush. You're allowed to. It doesn't have inherent kedusha. Tzaddikim like to put it in a bag and discard of it in a nicer way. But technically speaking, it's called a tashmish mitzvah, and therefore it can be thrown out.
What about tefillin?
Tefillin cannot. So therefore there is a difference between tefillin and tzitzis.
So aren't we concerned that the guy is going to start perhaps with mavaz and tefillin? That's why we don't think it's there.
Let's see. Rambam. Hilchos Melachim Perek Yud Halacha Yud. The Rambam says, we do not prevent the goy from doing any mitzvah that he feels like doing. The goy wants to do shiluach hakel. Go ahead. He wants to do leket shechecha and peah. I don't know what. Go ahead. Says the Radbaz over there in his comments on the Rambam. The Radbaz, who is greater than the interpreter of the Rambam, being the Radbaz from 500 years ago, and the Radbaz says, however, the Rambam is right that we do not prevent the goy from doing any mitzvah except for 3 mitzvahs. 3 mitzvahs that have extra kedusha and tahara, extra sanctity and purity, and they are tefillin, sefer Torah, and mezuzah. Your svara is backed up now by a Rambam, by a Radbaz. However, so the Radbaz clearly says, Ani choichech bedati, that's the language of the Radbaz. I feel that these mitzvahs cannot be given to them because he lacks the kedusha in his body, and these mitzvahs require extra kedusha. And therefore you cannot give the tefillin, in theory, based on where we achieved at this point, to the goy. The Reman Yoredei Reish Tzadi Aleph Seif Beis writes that you can't sell a mezuzah to a goy. Why? Because we're afraid, for the same reason we said before. The goy sees that we all have a mezuzah fixed on our doorpost, and he asks his neighbor, why do you have the mezuzah? Oh, it's a protection. Shin, Dalet, and Yud, which is mentioned on the mezuzah, is Shoimer, Daltos, Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu watches over the homes of Klal Yisrael that have a mezuzah. So the goy says, I'd like that too. Let me have one. But what if somebody breaks into his house a week later? He's going to say, this thing doesn't work, and he's going to chuck it in the garbage. Says the Rema, you're not allowed to give a mezuzah to a goy unless there's a chashash of Eva. What is Eva? We're afraid. Animosity. The goy is going to fight us. The goy is going to do something really bad to us. Here, in our case, do you have a greater chashash? This soldier has a gun in his hand. No greater chashash than Eva in this case. And therefore, I think that there's no problem giving him the tzitzis, the sefer, tehillim, and the tefillin. Maybe if the Chabadniks would call us before, we would suggest to them bring empty boxes of tefillin looking like tefillin. Could be. If we'll make sure that the goy doesn't say a bracha levatala on an empty box. But lechoira, based on the conditions that we heard, yes, we can give it to the goy. This is a fascinating question. What's the connection to the topic selected for this morning? Because when I heard about these Chabadniks and what they did, I was so impressed. Going down there to Gaza, risking their lives in a time of war where there are missiles flying all over the place, but they didn't care. What they had in mind is one thing. I want to go and give a mitzvah to a fellow Jew that I don't know, who's not observant, but doesn't make a difference. He is a Yid. He's a brother. And I think that was the essence of Rabbi Rindenau Zatzal. What can I do to help a friend? I think that if he was around, either he would organize this whole thing, this Chabad trip, or he himself would go down to Gaza, because I hear remarkable things about what he did do, driving all kinds of, just heard just before the shir from Rabbi Merkin, all kinds of amazing stories. Driving 7 hours for this person that he didn't really know, and going here and going there, just going out of his way, anything he can to help another Yid, to be there, to feel the pain, to share the load. I had this chus just a little less than 2 years ago. I was here in the States. Rabbi Rindenau came to Queens to meet me, and it was supposed to be a short meeting. But we started speaking Divrei Torah. And the meeting just again went on and on and on. I think we spent more than 6 hours together until the wee hours of the night. And it made an everlasting impression. And since then, we spoke a bunch of times on the phone. And it was so special. So the truth is, I'm going to say something which is going to sound harsh. Don't throw anything at me because I'm going to explain. I think, oy vey, woe to us that we had to have Rabbi Rindenau as a role model for sharing the burden with one's friend. I also think, Baruch Hashem, that we had Rabbi Rindenau to be a role model and a source of inspiration to show us how to share the burden with one's friend. What do I mean? Woe to us, oy vey zmir, because it's supposed to be so natural to all of us to be like a Rabbi Rindenau. But unfortunately, we're not there yet. So Baruch Hashem that we had Rabbi Rindenau around to look at him as a luminary, to teach us in his essence, to teach us in his doings, to teach us in everything about him. How is it that one should really conduct himself? Always thinking about someone else. And that is something that we all have to carry. And it says in the Sfarim HaKadoshim that when one departs this world, when a tzaddik leaves, his good attributes are as if floating up there in the air, and this is an opportune time for anyone to seize the opportunity and to grab them. And this goes on for the first 12 months after the person's petira. So there are so many good attributes, and all we need to do, it's as if they're hanging there, just waiting for us to catch them. And we all can do this. What better time, especially on this special day that we're saying a shir in his memory, the memory of his son Shlomo Zalman. But who says this is appropriate for everyone? Well, Rabbi Rindenau was an Adam Gadol. Shkoyach, what does that have to do with me? The Gemara says in Sanhedrin Lamed Zayin, Chaf Zayin, in Shavuos Lamed Tes, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh. Literally translated, we understand it to mean Klal Yisrael are guarantors. So one another. We have to make sure, I have to make sure that you do the mitzvahs, and you have to make sure that I do all the mitzvahs. But the Toimer Devoya, Moshe Devoya has a remarkable interpretation of what Kol Yisrael Arevim really means. In Sha'ar Aleph and Toimer Devoya, the Toimer Devoya explains, Arevim is from the language of Ta'aroivis, a mixture, because there's a little of me in you, and there's a little of you in me. We are all one. Kulanu bnei ish echad nachnu. We are all one. Mimele avade. We should worry about each other. Avade kol Yisrael is areivim zeh bazeh, because you are in essence taking care of yourself. I thought perhaps we can add to that. There's a pasuk in Malachi Gimel. We say it every day at the end of Shmoneh Esrei. Ve'arva la'Hashem minchas Yehuda. What is ve'arva? Ve'arva. The Mitzvah Sion over there on that pasuk says ve'arva is a loshon mesikus, language of sweetness. Kol Yisrael arevim. You have to be sweet to one another. How do you do that? By thinking, what does the other person need? How can I help him? And we have to look at our greatest leader, Moshe Rabbeinu. There is a pasuk in Shemois. The beginning of Shemois, when we start learning about Moshe Rabbeinu, the pasuk says, "Vayehi bayamim ahem vayigdal Moshe." It was in those days. Moshe grown up. The pasuk continues, "Vayetze el echav vayar besivloisav." Moshe Rabbeinu went to see his brothers, and he looked at their burdens. Says the Medrash Rabbah, Vayigdal Moshe. Why did he become so great? Because Vayar besivloisam, because he went out to see the burden of his friends. That made him so great. And the Medrash says, he looked at them carrying the heavy loads that the Egyptians made them carry, and he says, Oi! Whoa! There is nothing harsher and nothing harder than what you have to endure, and I wish I would die that you don't have to do what you have to do. And he would put his shoulder under the heavy load, and he would help each and every one of Klal Yisrael. And because he helped teach every one of Klal Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself said, Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ata hinachta asakecha, you left what you needed to do behind, and instead you went liros b'tzar anshel Yisrael, you went to see the pain of Klal Yisrael, v'nahagta bahem minhag achim, and you treated them like brothers. Ani meniach es ha'elyonim ve'es ha'tachtoinim, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm leaving the upper and lower worlds, I'm leaving everything behind. Va'adaber imcha, and I am going to speak to you. That is why the pasuk says HaKadosh Baruch Hu turned to Moshe and started speaking to him. Why? Because he was concentrating on seeing the pain of his brothers and trying to help. Bearing the burden with one's friends is not just a nice recommendation. The Pirkei Avos says there's 48 acquisitions of Torah. This 37th acquisition is noiseh ba'oil im chaveroi, sharing the burden with one's friend. You want to acquire the crown of Torah? We have to start practicing being there for one another. More than that, there's a mitzvah called ve'halachta bidrachav, walk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ways, emulate him. The Rambam counts it in his count of 613 mitzvahs as the 8th positive mitzvah. Ve'halachta bidrachav, walk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ways. And what do you think HaKadosh Baruch Hu does? Says the Medrash, Yalkut Tehillim Daf Kuf Chav Tes Amud Aleph, B'shah shehalchu Yisrael al Nehar Pras. When Klal Yisrael were going on the Euphrates, they're going now to exile, and they're carrying heavy loads. Yarad HaKadosh Baruch Hu im hamalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Pamalia Shel Mala, and the angels came down, v'nasu hamasoi aleihem, and they took and they shared the burden that Klal Yisrael are carrying now to help Klal Yisrael. The pasuk in Yeshaya says, Bechol tzarasam loy tzar. Whenever we are in trouble, HaKadosh Baruch Hu feels the pain. In fact, the Pele Yoetz in a erech called Ezer says, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps you when you're in trouble, so too, since we are commanded to walk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ways, we have to help each other. You have to help your friend when he's in trouble. But when should you start practicing this? It's a pasuk in Eicha. The pasuk in Eicha Perek Gimel pasuk Chav Zayin says, Tov lagever ki yisa oil b'ne'urav. It is good for a man that he bear a yoke in his youth. Maybe we can explain this pasuk to be. Yes, start when you're young. When you start when you're young, when you become older, it's not such a hard thing to do. It becomes second nature. The Gemara in Tanis Daf Yud Aleph says, Yetzair Adam Atzmoi im Hatzibur. This is an instruction from Chazal. One has to feel the pain of others. Why? Because we learn it from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, Klal Yisrael are fighting Amalek. Parshas Beshalach, the end of the Parsha. In the pasuk says, V'yedei Moshe kvedim. Suddenly Moshe didn't have koyach to stand. So they took a big stone and they sat him down. Asks the Gemara, excuse me? This is how you treat Biden? I'm sorry, Lehavdil Moshe Rabbeinu? The leader, you give him a stone to sit on? Where's a padded seat? I just flew El Al. I didn't get a stone. You can't give the leader Moshe Rabbeinu something a little more comfortable to sit on? Says the Gemara, Moshe Rabbeinu said, no. I want to feel the pain. They're fighting now a milchama, they're fighting a war. I can't sit comfortably when my brothers are fighting a war. But this goes much further than this. Did Moshe Rabbeinu have any connection to the reason why the war started? No. Chazal say, Kevan sherafu yadeihem min haTorah, since they were lax in learning Torah, that's why the war started. Because they didn't believe in Moshe Rabbeinu. Rashi brings over there, and so at the end of Parshas Beshalach, that Klal Yisrael says, where is HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Yesh Hashem bekirbeinu imayin. Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu around us? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, excuse me? Don't you always see me around? I'm helping you. And you're asking, Hayesh Hashem bekirbeinu chayechem. You're going to find out. Because now the dog, referring to Amalek, will come and will bite you. Moshe Rabbeinu had nothing to do with this war. If they believed in Moshe, there wouldn't be a war. And yet, even though he had nothing to do with this, but when Klal Yisrael are fighting, Moshe Rabbeinu wants to feel the pain. And therefore he will sit on a stone and not on a padded seat. That's a true Jewish leader. To feel the pain of others, no matter the reason. It's a remarkable Gemara in Eruvin Nun Daled Amud Beis. Mamish, unbelievable. Reb Freda was teaching Torah. He had one Talmid who wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. He had to repeat it again and again and again, whatever he was teaching him. And only when he reached repeating it 400 times, this kid chapped. Okay. Reb Freda apparently has a lot of patience. One day, somebody knocks on the door while he's teaching him. So Reb Freda goes over to the door, he talks to the fellow, and he comes back and continues to teach him. They reach the 400th time. At this point, this Talmud is supposed to understand what's going on, and he doesn't understand a word. So Reb Freda says to him, what's going on with you today? Do you feel okay? What's wrong? He says to him, no, I saw before that somebody knocked on the door and they asked you to come. What are you going to, bar mitzvah? Is a wedding tonight? I know you're leaving soon, so I can't concentrate. I know any second you're leaving. And Reb Freda told him, don't worry, I'm not moving until you're going to understand the Gemara we're learning. And the Gemara said he taught him another 400 times. So much so that a bas kol came out from Shamayim, a heavenly voice emanated from Shamayim and said, Reb Freda, what you did is remarkable. We want to reward you from up above. What would you like? Another 400 years added to your life, or that you and the entire generation will go to the Olam Haba? Reb Freda says, it's not about me. Me and the entire generation should go to the Olam Haba. I don't need those extra years. A heavenly voice emanated again and came out and said, give him both. I think that's Rabbi Rinda now. Doesn't make a difference. The guy doesn't chap, so you teach him again. He doesn't get it the first time, doesn't get it the 10th time. Doesn't make a difference. You go all out for your Talmidim, you go all out for your friends. But there's, by the way, an interesting observation in this Gemara. We are all impressed with Reb Freda. It's really remarkable. Look, if I see that you're not getting what I'm saying, how many times do you think I'm going to repeat it before I leave? 2, 3, if I have a lot of patience, maybe 10 times. So we understand that Freda has unbelievable patience and therefore he should be rewarded. But no one asks, what about the Talmud? Imagine, you don't understand what I'm saying, 2nd, 3rd, 4th time, 10th time. How long will it take you before you either fall asleep or leave? 400 times on a daily basis to be willing to listen? So I'm guessing, afraid that every time he changed a little the way he was saying it, but unbelievable patience. Why doesn't it say that a heavenly voice emanated from Shamayim and said, wow, Mr. Talmud, you are amazing. What you exhibited was unbelievable amount of patience. You're going to be... Nobody speaks about it. Nobody says anything about it. Maran Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita says, what do you mean? He didn't understand the question. He said, the Talmud has no choice. What do we say in Ma'ariv every night? Ki hein chayenu ve'oirech yomeinu. Torah is life. If the Talmud doesn't understand, he's lacking oxygen. Imagine a person is drowning and you're throwing a lifesaver into the water. And he jumps on it. Are we going to say, wow, what you did? What do you mean? It's the only chance of survival. The Talmud understood that without Torah there's no life. But Reb Freda had a choice. Reb Freda had a choice because he doesn't have to teach this student. He can go and teach someone else. He can teach himself. He doesn't have to go and teach someone else. And for that, he should be praised. This story is remarkable. But it even carries a nafkamina lahalacha. It has practical implication. Why? Because of Moshe and Igos Moshe. Even Ezer, Chelek Daled, Simin, I believe Chav Zayin, says, because of this story in the Gemara, he says, a Talmid Chochem should give from his time 10% to teach others. Aye, but you can go further in your own studies and you can become a giant of all giants. That's true. But what about feeling the pain of others who are not on your level? What about helping others who need that help? And therefore, says Reb Moshe, you should give from your time. What did Rabbi Rinda now do for a living? Give from his time. In the Dorim Samech Daled Amud Beis, the Gemara says there's 4 people who are considered to be dead. Dead men walking. They're alive, but they're counted as dead. Who are these lucky people? The ani, the poor person, the mitzoira, person who has tzaras, a person who's a suma, a person who is blind, and a person who doesn't have children. But why? We know some of these people, they're highly functioning individuals. Why are they counted as dead in the eyes of Chazal? Rabbi Bodenheim before mentioned Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz explains, because these people can't help others. The poor person, he can't give to others. What is life without the ability of giving to others? The Metzoira, where does the person who has Tzarat sit? Badad Yeshev, secluded, out of the camp. So how can he help others? If you can't help others, it's as if you're dead. The Suma, the blind person, he doesn't see what others need. If you can't see what others need, you're dead. One who has no children, he can't give to his children. They can be great people, great tzaddikim. But Chazal are teaching us here a lesson, that the only way that it's counted as life, real life, is when you help others and feel what others need. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz used to say that the fools think that sharing the burden with one's friend means that when you see that the person is wounded, you run and you help him. Put the bandage on. It doesn't end there, but he still has yisurim, he has afflictions, he has pain, and you have to take care of that. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz used to say like this: everybody understands that when you see a person carrying a heavy package, you run and you help him. But it's the same when you see a person carrying a heavy package of yisurim, of pain. So you have not to give him his heart, you have to give him, not to give him your shoulder, you have to give him your heart. It's the same thing. So it's not just helping physically. Many times, it's helping by just listening, sharing, giving ideas, even just allowing the other party to say what he feels. And that is sharing the burden with one's friend. Does it really help to give your heart? Chazal have very harsh 4 words, I think, that explain and answer my question. In Tanis Daf Chav Gimel, Chazal say, Oy chavrusa, oy misusa. Either you have a good friend, or you're dead. I think that answers the question. Chazal even go further. In Brachos Yud Beis, Chazal say, when a person is sick, so he goes to the Talmid Chacham, he goes to the rabbi and asks for a blessing. What is the Talmid Chacham supposed to do? V'im Talmid Chacham hu tzarich sheyechel le'alav. The Talmid Chacham as if has to feel sick. In other words, he has to feel the pain of the sick person, so he himself as if is on the same level. Because when he feels bad, he can definitely daven out. Now he's davening for himself. What does it mean to feel the pain of others? Just a few years ago, the Vizhnitzer Rebbe goes to one of his Chasidim's wedding. The Vizhnitzer Rebbe doesn't usually go to a chasana, but he did. Just before the chasana, before the chuppah starts, he goes to the father of the bride and he says to him, do me a favor. I'd like you to call me when you come back home at the end of the wedding. The Chassid looks at his Rebbe and says, Rebbe, that may be 3 a.m., could be 3:30 a.m. I don't know when I'm going to get out of here. And the Rebbe says, I know. As soon as you come back home, pick up the phone and call me. I want to talk to you. When the Rebbe says something, you have to do it. The wedding ends, he comes back home, and in fact, it was 3:30 in the morning. What can you do? The Rebbe asked that you should call him. The Rebbe was sleeping. The Gabbai picks up, and the father of the Kala says, the Rebbe asked me to call him. Really? Yes. He said that I should wake him up no matter what. Doesn't make a difference the time. Okay. He goes to the Rebbe and he says, Rebbe, the fellow here that you went to the wedding a few hours ago, he's on the phone. Oh, go, shkoyach. The Rebbe gets up, he washes his hands, he takes the phone, and he starts schmoozing with the guy for 18 minutes. You have to realize, in Rebbe's time, 18 minutes is eternity. Or maybe even more than that. 18 minutes? Who speaks to the Rebbe on the phone? The Gabbai is looking to understand it's 3:30 in the morning. But he can't ask him, he's having a nice conversation. He's schmoozing with him. So, how did you like the band? The music good. The schnitzel, was it still hot when it came in? Who came? Who didn't come to the wedding? Did Jochen Klatz and Yenem and Yankiv, did they all come? Your friends. And he's schmoozing with him. Finally, the Rebbe hangs up, and the Gabbai says, Rebbe, Yelamdeinu Rabbeinu, my kulei hai, what was that all about? And the Rebbe says, what do you mean? This guy just lost his wife a few months ago. This is the last kid that he is marrying. Now you know how it is when the wedding is over. You come back home and you schmooze with your wife. So how was it by the women's section? Did you like the music? Was the schnitzel hot? Did all your friends come? Did all my friends come? This guy is coming back home to 4 walls and he has no one to speak to. I decided that I'll be his wife. It's not feeling the pain of someone else. It's looking for opportunities. Who will be hurt in a few hours? I'm sure the guy wasn't even thinking about it, but the Rebbe was already thinking what's going to happen in a few hours when he comes back home. Maran Harav Shteiman Zecher Tzadik Livrocha just lost one of the greatest Gedolei Yisrael a few years ago. A guy from the States came to him many years ago. He came to him on Chol HaMoed Pesach to get a bracha. And he comes in and he saw that there's a big barrel of water in the middle of the mansion of Reb Steinman, which is much smaller than the size of this room alone. So he asks him, Rebbe, what is this barrel of water doing here? So Reb Steinman says, there's a chumrah, some people are machmir on Pesach in Eretz Yisrael not to drink the water from the faucet because it comes from the Kinneret. And many people sit by the Kinneret on Pesach and eat a pita bread or whatever they eat and they throw it into the water, even though there's a lot of filtration system, and by the time it reaches your house it's 100% and there's no chametz, but there's a chumrah. Okay, fine. This fellow showed up again next year, Chol HaMoed Pesach, to get a bracha from Reb Steinman. The barrel wasn't there. Interesting. You were machmir last year, but you're not machmir this year, but you're not going to ask this to Reb Steinman. This guy kept coming every single year. He comes once a year to Eretz Yisrael, Chol HaMoed Pesach, and he comes to Reb Steinman and he asks him for a bracha, and he notices for 20 years there was no barrel in the middle of the room. On the 21st year, 21 years after, suddenly the barrel came back. This was already too much. He says, Rebbe, explain. If you don't mind, I ask a personal question. 20 years ago there was a barrel of water here. It disappeared for 20 years. I understood that for some reason this chumrah doesn't apply, but now it came back. What's pshat? And Reb Steinman told him, 21 years ago when you were here and I had this barrel of water, in the middle of Pesach, my wife came to me, freaked out. Oi! I fed you chametz on Pesach! What do you mean? Accidentally, I took some water from the faucet into the pot and I cooked something. I fed you chametz on Pesach! And I said, Rebbetzin, don't worry. It wasn't chametz. It's a chumrah that I use only this barrel. It's okay, don't worry about it. She says, no! If you're makpid to have this barrel, obviously you can't use the faucet. And if I use the faucet to cook for you food on Pesach, I fed you chametz on Pesach. And he says to Rebbetzin, it's not chametz, don't worry about it. She says, yes it is apparently. So to make sure she understands it really is not chametz and it's only a chumrah, He got rid of the barrel for 20 years. But he says to him, a few months ago when my wife passed away, so now I can do this chumrah again. Thinking about others. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zecher Tzaddik Livrocha was once walking on Shabbos and he saw a father and his son walking in the street. The father was schlepping a bench. The son was walking behind him, not helping him. Reb Shlomo Zalman ran to the yeshiva and he spoke to the Talmidim and he told him, what a crooked way of thinking. In Yerushalmi, in Kiddushin, Perek Aleph Halacha Zayin, the Yerushalmi called mitzvahs kibud av va'em chamura shebechamuros. It's the more severe, the more strict, positive mitzvah out there. And this kid didn't want to carry the bench because maybe there's a problem with the Eruv here. I didn't want to carry. So he was preferring to disgrace his father, that his father now has to schlep for him the bench. Especially that in our times we can rely on the Chazon Ish that says that there is no real Reshus Harabim T'Yorais almost anywhere. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach also saw once a husband and his wife walking on Shabbos, and the wife was carrying whatever she was carrying, and the husband wasn't carrying anything. Who knows if the Eruv is kosher? Reb Shlomo Zalman ran to the yeshiva and said to the Talmidim, what does he think, this guy? That his wife is a Shabbos goy? He wants to be machmir, so let his wife be machmir as well. What he wants is to go to Gan Eden on the account of his wife. Just recently, we all are aware of the Meron tragedy. 45 beautiful souls went up in a storm up to Shamayim. One of the families is a family by the name of Engelrad from Yerushalayim, and they were sitting Shiva for two of their sons, Moshe, Nasan, Nata, and their other son Yehoshua, who both died in that terrible tragedy. In the middle of the Shiva, a farmer from down south, not from, comes in carrying boxes of fruits from his field. He placed them down, he started crying, and he said, there's nothing else that I can give you. I don't even know the right words to say. I just want to give you my heart. And he gave them these boxes of fruits. This guy doesn't have money. The fruits of his labor, which he could have taken to the market and sold. But he wanted to show them we are united, we are one. A Haredi family from Yerushalayim with this secular farmer from down south, but he wanted to show we are one. And when I heard this, I felt so proud to be a Yid. Mike Amcha Yisrael. Who is like our nation? I think that this fruits that he brought to this family in Shamayim is considered minchas bikurim. This is like bikurim, and who knows how much chesed and rachamim this will pull on Klal Yisrael. Reb Chetzkel Abramsky, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, Gadol Ador, passed away 45 years ago. 9 months before his petira, 9 months before he died, he was sitting at home, and a neighbor, a widow, came to speak to his Rebbetzin Chava. And she goes in, and Reb Chetzkel Abramsky, old, stands up and says to this widow, look, they just bought me this new garment. What do you think? Does it look good on me? What do you think about it? Should I wear it? He wanted to make an almana feel good, that her opinion counts. The same Reb Chetzkel Abramsky was once walking in the streets of Yerushalayim, the streets of Beit Vagan. I actually grew up in Beit Vagan. I had the schus of Reb Chetzkel Abramsky was my sandak. And Reb Chetzkel Abramsky was walking with a fellow, and he saw a little girl crying. So he went over to her and he says, little girl, why are you crying? What happened? And she says, well, I was playing with my friends, and my friends told me that my dress is ugly. Reb Chetzkel Abramsky, Gadol Ador, puts on his glasses and he looks at her dress and he says, little girl, what's your name? And she says, Chana. And he says to her, go to your mother, Chana, and says that the rabbi said that your name is beautiful and your dress is beautiful. And the fellow with him says, Rebbe,
What was that all about? He says, what do you mean? We are commanded to walk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ways. The pasuk in Yeshaya says, Umacha Hashem Elokim Dima Me'al Kol Panim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu erases the tears of every face. We are supposed to do the same. About the previous story, Reb Chatzkel Abramsky once explained, the pasuk says, Yasom ve'almana ye'oide. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu encourages the hearts of the orphans, of the widows. We have to do the same. So is it really kedai? The Gemara says yes. Tanis daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, Chazal say. Kol hametzaer atzmo im hatzibur. If you feel the pain of others, zoiche veroye benachamas hatzibur. You'll be zoiche to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu's salvation in Yitzhak Hashem. We'll dedicate a few words to Eretz Yisrael, and you'll see how we make the transition. It's the famous Maaseh about the Bas Ein. The Bas Ein was a Hasidic Rebbe from about 170 or 80 years ago in Poland. Reb Avram Dov Maravich. And he loved Eretz Yisrael. But he lived in Chutz La'aretz in Golos. And back then, it wasn't like, taking a 10-hour flight and you're here. When somebody from Eretz Yisrael came, it was a whole big to-do. So a guy from Tzfat came to his town, where he was the Rebbe. And they made a whole big party for him. They sat him down. Shabbos, they all ate together, and they said, tell us about Eretz Yisrael. What is it about? Tell us, how is it to live there at Eretz Yisrael? And this chassid says, I live in Tzfat Ira Kodesh. I'm 10 minutes away from Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. You know what it is to live in Tzfat? It's unbelievable. Tell us more. He says, 3 hours. I'm in Yerushalayim Ira Kodesh. I'm by the Koisel. Tell us more. And he kept telling him about Eretz Yisrael. And at one point he ran out of things to say. But they kept pressing, tell us more. Well, what can he do? Quick thinking. So he says to them, in Eretz Yisrael, there are no pebbles in the streets. It's all precious stones, gems and diamonds. I said, wow, really? Said, oh yeah, sure. And this was the straw that broke the camel's back. The Bas Ein, one of the most chashuva Hasidic Sfarim. Reb Avram Dov decided, Motzei Shabbos, I'm going to Eretz Yisrael. And he packed his bag and he moved to Eretz Yisrael. Till today there's a shul in Sfas of the Bas Ein. And after a few weeks in Eretz Yisrael, he moved to Tzfat. He meets this fellow. And he says to them, I remember the Shabbos that you spent with us. It was so special. And you're really the one that propelled me to action. And everything you said is true. It's so amazing to live here. Just one question. What about those precious stones, gems and diamonds in the street? Where are they? And the guy got stuck. Quick thinking. And he says, well, Rebbe, not everyone is zoichet to see it. You're laughing. Rebbe Avram Dov started crying. And he realized he's not on that level. He went into his house, he closed the door, and he did not leave for a full year. Working on himself, trying to ascend higher and higher, to be able to be on that level. After a year, he made a big kiddush, and people in town asked him, what's the kiddush? Bar mitzvah. Pidyon haben. What's the kiddush for? And he said, last year this fellow told me, not everybody is zoichet to see it. Baruch Hashem, now I am zoichet to see it. With my conversations with Rabbi Binder now, I know that he was zoichet to see it, and that's why he made the move. His fervor, his excitement when he talked to me about Eretz Yisrael was amazing. And I happen to live there. But I think even more unique than that, and even more special than that, is that he saw precious stones, gems, diamonds in every Jewish fellow in his neshama, because he looked straight at the neshama, and he ignored the external wrapping. The Gemara in Brachos says, Brachos Daf Hey, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai teaches us, there are 3 gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Klal Yisrael. Torah, Olam Haba, and Eretz Yisrael, and they are all acquired through afflictions. Why? You give a gift, just give a gift. Why does it have to come through Yisur and through afflictions? The Michtav Me'Eliyahu explains beautifully. Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler says, in Baba Basra Daf Kuf Nun Ches Amud Beis, the Gemara says, Avira de Eretz Yisrael Machkim. The air in Eretz Yisrael makes one wiser. So you know what's going to happen? A person who's on a spiritual level, he's on a darga, he comes to Eretz Yisrael and suddenly he starts flowing with Chidushei Torah. He understands everything. He may become haughty. So to balance things out, the Kodesh Baruch Hu gives a little Yisurim. It's a special place to live in. So special. In Tanis Daf Zayin, in Makos Daf Yud, the Gemara says, Cherev el abadim v'noyalu. The Gemara darshans a pasuk and the Gemara says, woe to Talmidei Chachomim that learn by themselves. You have to learn b'chavrusa, you have to learn with your fellow. Because Talmidei Chachomim who learn by themselves lose their Torah. Says the Yaivitz in his Akdama to the Siddur Daf Lamed Gimel, says the Aron Chaim, Reb Chaim Palachi, this is true in Chutz La'aretz, not in Eretz Yisrael. Because in Eretz Yisrael you have the air that makes you wiser. It balances things out, the fact that you're learning by yourself, and you will not lose your Torah. The special merits of Eretz Yisrael. What do you think, Abba Yisai? The air space in Eretz Yisrael makes one wiser. Does it apply to Goyim as well? Or just to us? Is it something, a segula, that a bonus? You come to my palace, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you'll become wiser. A Goy, he's not invited. So it's not going to work for him. What do you think? Will Eretz Yisrael make one wiser even if he's a Goy, or just to Eden? What do you say, Abba Yisai? Both. Who told you? Remember, to Paskin and Beis Din, we need some kind of documentations. Something. Ten lachacham v'yech kamod. Maybe it's a pasuk Shlomo HaMelech said about Am Yisrael. And the chacham, who says the goy is a chacham before he comes?
The Kutim had to adapt certain things because it affected them.
They had to adapt certain things?
The people who brought going here.
Yeah.
No, it was affecting them. They had to get into what things to do because they were having problems. It has an effect on going through.
Maybe they would have had the same problems if they were in Chutz La'aretz. We need to compare something and to show Eretz Yisrael makes one wiser. The Shabbos Tshuva Safarkasta de Anya in Yoredea Chelek Gimel, I believe, Simen Kuf Nun Aleph, and he brings a raya from the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer in Chulin Daf Yud Gimel. It's clear that it affects Goyim as well. Why? Because the Gemara in Chulin says that the status of Goyim in Chutz La'aretz is not of Oivdei Avodah Zarah, even though they do worship Avodah Zarah. Why? Because Minag Avoseihem Beyadeihem. They do it, they're on autopilot. They do it because my father used to serve the stone, and my grandfather and the years before. This is what we do. They don't know what they're doing. But in Eretz Yisrael, Oivdei Avodah Zarah do have the status of Oivdei Avodah Zarah because, well, here they understand what they're doing. Why? Because the air in Eretz Yisrael makes you wiser, even if you're a goy. How much more so if you're a yid and you have kavanah to the mitzvah that you're doing? You know, in Ksubis Kuf Yud Aleph, the Gemara says that when you walk 4 amos in Eretz Yisrael, it's a mitzvah. I once asked Maran Mori Rabbi Saratoy Reb Chaim Kanievsky Rebbe, I live, let's say, in Eilat, and I go to work every day in Haifa. I'm going to drive every day in my car, air-conditioned car, very comfortable. Every 4 amos I cover is also a mitzvah. It's only when you're walking. Reb Chaim in his abbreviated style writes me 3 words. It's a Gemara that appears in Kiddushin Lamed Gimel. Roichev kemehalech dami. When you're riding a donkey, the Gemara says, it's as if you're walking. So that's your donkey. You chose to buy a car instead of a donkey. It's as if you're walking. Yes, you're mekayim the mitzvah. So I told the Rebbe, I want to take it another step. I'm going to jump now to the pool that I don't have in my backyard. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Every 4 amos is a mitzvah? And Reb Chaim says to me, yes. Rabbi say, do you understand what it is to live in Eretz Yisrael? There's an underrated Rashi. Everybody knows the Rashi that appears in Dvarim. Rashi says, Divrei Torah have to be new in your eyes every single day. You open up the Sefer, it's the 15th time you saw it already. Be excited! It's the same Rashi though, that no one knows for some reason, in Parshas Bo, at the end of the Parsha, V'haya ki yevi'acha, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to bring you to the land, says Rashi, Eretz Yisrael has to be as if new in your eyes every single morning. You open up your eyes, wow, I'm zoichet to be where Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen were not able to be. The schus, Yitzhak Hashem, from now on, only Simcha and Nachas will pursue the Rindenau family. We all daven for Tchias HaMeisim, Bekorov Mamash Yitzhak Hashem, and once again we will see the Rav Zecher Tzadik Livracha, his son Shlomo Zalman. We will all, in Yitzhak Hashem, be holding hands, dancing with Mashiach Tzidkeinu in front of Beis HaMikdash, Bekorov Beyameinu, Amen Ve'Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.